How's it going, everyone? My name is Alone Vault Wanderer, and when I created my Fallout 3 retrospective video, I did it because I was in a bit of a creative rut and I didn't know what kind of video to make. But what I was sure of was that I wanted to do something that I was passionate about. Now mind you, yes, my channel is traditionally known for Fallout, but there's other games that I really love as well. And though it took me a while, this year I finally finished God of War on the PS4. This too is a game that I absolutely love, and right now when I think about making a video for my YouTube channel, without a doubt this is the thing that comes to my mind. I want to talk about God of War, I loved my experiences with it, and I want to share them with you today. Yes, this is a little out of the ordinary, but it's in the same vein as my previous retrospective video, so I do hope you enjoy it, and if you do, please like and subscribe, I would really appreciate it. And quickly before we get into this retrospective video, I want to make it clear. This video is only going to have very light spoilers for the game. I'm sure that there are many of you out there that haven't played the game yet, and I think it would be a crime for me to make a video that you couldn't watch just in case you wanted to play the game later. All of the gameplay you'll be seeing on the screen is from the first 2 or 3 hours of the game, so it's not that spoiler heavy. The one exception to that I'll make very clear as I talk about it. But even then, in my opinion, there are no major story spoilers in that segment. Keep in mind as well, I'm not working from a script, but I do have an idea in terms of the few big things that I want to cover when talking about God of War. So with all of that out of the way, this is a retrospective into God of War. I think the first big thing to cover with God of War is the world and the visuals. The game is set in Midgard in ancient Norway, but even though the game is predominantly set in Midgard, not only is there a vast range of environments that you can encounter in Midgard, there's also an array of realms that you can travel to, which too offer their own unique biomes and landscapes. And because of all of these locales combined together, in addition to the amazing graphics of the game, to me one of the standout points about God of War is that it's just a phenomenally beautiful game. On the screen right now, you're seeing just a very small segment of the kinds of things that you can see in this game, and each new location is honestly breathtaking when you first encounter it. Truly, I've never been someone that has said that visuals in video games and graphics in video games are the most important thing. But even then, I found it very difficult not to appreciate how much time, effort, love, and energy went into making this beautiful world of God of War. So many of the scenes are breathtaking, especially when combined with the cinematic view of the cutscenes. And when playing this game, you've just got to appreciate how stunning it really is. It of course definitely helped because I played on a PS4 Pro in 4K with HDR, but even then when recording gameplay on my regular PS4 in 1080p, it is still a joy to look at. And the world and the visuals really do help as well when a large aspect of this game is just exploring, finding different secrets, and completing different quests. Midgard and the other realms are a joy to explore. There's always something new to see, and whether it's the architecture or the environments or the statues, the different art that exists, and the heavy Nordic influence, this is a game that I could honestly go back to again and again just to appreciate how both unique and beautiful it really looks. And this ties in slightly to the next thing that I want to talk about the game, which is its lore. I absolutely adore Norse mythology, and I'll be honest, a lot of that is mainly because of my love for Marvel. I love Thor Marvel movies, I adore Norse mythology, and just reading and learning about the different gods like Odin and Thor and Balder, and of course Loki. And then there are concepts like Ragnarok and the 9 different realms that exist, whether it's Alfheim or Vanaheim, Helheim or Midgard of course. It's always been a subject area that has fascinated me, and funnily enough, I didn't even know that Norse mythology was going to be explored so heavily in God of War. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't research about the game before a lot, so I went in relatively fresh-faced. But then when I realized as playing the game how much this game would be exploring Norse mythology, I was completely and utterly hooked. And the reason why this ties in with the world and the visuals is because there is a lot of environmental storytelling. A lot of the lore that you pick up about the gods and other characters, and also of the different realms and what happened in the past, is done so by just exploring and getting Atreus to read different things on a wall, or opening up those cabinets that depict different events that have taken place or will take place in that setting. So not only is the world just beautiful to look at and explore, but you have that extra incentive to keep exploring and to keep finding these different different secrets, because more of that background into Norse mythology, at least how God of War presents it, is then going to be more and more illuminated towards you. So the way those two different things meld together is absolutely brilliant. But then here's the unique thing about God of War, and here is when I'll mention a slight spoiler. It happens, about a quarter of the way into the game or so roughly. You eventually encounter a character called Mimir. But Mimir, unfortunately, is stuck in a tree for whatever reason. I won't go into that. But to free him, you actually cut off his head, and then you have him reanimated by someone else. And then at that point, Mimir actually accompanies you on your journey throughout the game. Yes, funnily enough, he is just a talking head, but he is attached to Kratos' belt. And as you explore the game and as you play the game, he would go into so much detail about the world, about what's happened in the past, about the different gods, about all of the different events that have taken place. There is so much that he tells you which just gives the world character, which gives you such a deep understanding of Norse mythology. And not just of Norse mythology as we typically understand it, but it's twisted. The developers of God of War, Santa Monica, completely subverted our traditional understandings of Norse mythology and presented it in a way to suggest, well, what if gods like Odin and Thor weren't so good? What if they were actually the bad guys, to put it in very layman's terms? That is what is to me so interesting about this game. It's not just a retelling of pre-existing material out there. It's a complete reimagining of it. And that is just an additional reason why it's so interesting and compelling to explore this game as deep as you can and extract all the information about the lore. That is especially where Mimir is so key, but there are other ways which that is done as well. And of course, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if you like Norse mythology just as much as I do, I think you're really going to appreciate how it's presented in this game. And alright, let's finally talk about the story and the characters in this game. To summarize, the protagonists in this game are Kratos from the previous games and also Atreus, his son. You discover straight away in this game that Atreus' mother, Faye, has unfortunately passed away, and the one last request she had of Atreus and Kratos is to have her ashes spread from the highest peak in all the realms. For pretty much the entirety of the game, that is the ultimate goal that Kratos and Atreus has. But when attempting to fulfill this goal, that is when the Norse gods come into it, with the main antagonist in the game being a god called Balder. And you find out very early in the game again that Balder is impervious to any kind of pain. So to me, it was very interesting that while the main goal of the game was simply to spread Faye's ashes from the highest peak in all the realms, there was this continuous threat from the gods that started from Balder just showing up at your house and fighting you as Kratos. So after being forced to leave your home, you're continuously asking, who is Balder? Why did he just attack us? Why have we started to draw the attention of the gods? It's a continuous plot point that fascinated me, especially as you start to understand who the different gods are, what purpose they have, why they're so interested in you, how they all interconnect with each other, what kind of roles they played in the massive events leading up to where you are now, and also what kind of role they're going to play in the future when it comes to the massive event known as Ragnarok. But again, I'm not going to go into more detail, it's just something that I absolutely loved as well. And now, staying in line with the story of the game, here is the thing that I loved most about God of War. It was seeing the relationship between Atreus and Kratos grow. This to me was the most fascinating bit about God of War. Yes, I love the game because it put a heavy emphasis into story, but in particular what it really did was focus on the relationship between these two characters, and I absolutely adored this. I loved their interactions with each other, especially in cutscenes. I loved seeing them conflict with each other. I loved seeing Atreus just learn about the world outside of his home, especially because he starts as a really naive young boy. And then you've got Kratos, someone that we know in past God of War games has been such a violent man who's only really known one thing in his lifetime, to then be left with having to raise his son on his own. Initially, he really struggles with showing emotion. He really struggles with connecting with Atreus and teaching him things and being sympathetic and empathizing with who, again, is just a young boy, someone who doesn't know his place in the world, someone who doesn't really understand what the world is really like. And it was such a fascinating adventure to be a part of. And again, I'm not going to spoil exactly how it goes and where it ends, but you can imagine they go through some conflicts. There are times where their relationship is very strong, and there are other times where their relationship is not so strong. And this was the biggest thing for me in the game. Just seeing these two characters grow together, seeing Kratos understanding learning how to be a proper father, seeing Atreus just growing as a kid, and also becoming a seasoned warrior. This part of the game was undoubtedly my favorite, and if you as a video game player especially love character building and just seeing different characters interact with each other in a prolonged way throughout the entirety of a game, then I highly recommend that you play this game. So I'll be honest, the things that I've talked about so far in this video, from the world, visuals, stories, characters, and lore, these are the main reasons to me why I had such a wonderful time playing God of War. But of course, there are many other aspects. You've got the combat and the gameplay. The Leviathan axe is so much damn fun. Just picture Stormbreaker from Infinity War and Endgame, but instead of lightning, it's ice. That's pretty much what the Leviathan axe is, and it's so much fun to use, whether it's throwing it from a distance, getting in close to enemies and just hacking and slashing. To be honest, it's one of my most favorite video game weapons of all time, and I'm not just being hyperbolic there. It's an absolute joy to use, especially because of the way that you can improve the Leviathan axe, like by increasing its damage output or giving it different kinds of abilities. My favorite ability, and I'm trying to avoid as many big spoilers as possible, but it's an ability where you can fire ice from the axe like it's a beam and just stop and damage enemies to an insane amount. It was so much fun to use. And I think the most badass thing about the axe is when you throw it, just instantly recalling it to your hand. It never stops feeling cool. It's such an amazing thing. But of course there are other aspects of the combat, like Spartan Rage. When you build up your rage meter enough, Kratos can enter Spartan Rage mode and just go insane and just punch the crap out of most enemies and just deal insane damage. That is always fun to do, and as soon as I hit Spartan Rage mode, I typically always just used it straight away. But God of War isn't just about Kratos killing enemies. You also have Atreus by your side, who over the course of the game grows into a fine warrior. Yes, he just starts with a bow and arrow and has the ability to shoot enemies with relatively minimal damage and at a slow pace. Over time, you can improve his skills, the damage output of his arrows, how quickly he recovers his arrows and can fire again, how much damage he can deal by direct melee without using his bow and arrows, and just a bunch of other things. Like he can even get different kinds of arrows, like electricity or light arrows that have different purposes. With the electricity ones being able to deal insane damage, especially when you improve it, so it can chain together electricity between different enemies. Like there's so much involved in the combat of this game that this video won't be enough to go into everything, but I think what I covered are definitely the main things, and if you play this game, you'll understand how these basic elements are continuously expanded upon as you level up, get more experience points, increase your skills, and just become an incredibly powerful father and son duo. And now to quickly touch on the quests and the content in the game. I briefly mentioned before what the main purpose of the game is, but this pretty much is an open world game. And it's funny too, not only can you explore and just do pretty much whatever you want within reason, Atreus at times will encourage you to do that. He'll say, yes, we can do this, but why don't we go explore for a little bit? Because there are different little side quests that you can do to get some really cool and unique items. Mentioning the lore again, a lot of the lore to be extracted from the game is done so by just exploring and going off the main path. Yes, for me, I absolutely love the main story and watching the relationship between Atreus and Kratos grow, so I did like to stick to the main path as much as possible, but of course there is every incentive for you to explore and complete these different quests. Talk to different characters in the game, but rest assured if you like big open world games and a lot of little side things to complete, God of War is definitely for you, especially because it's not just tied to Midgard. Again, there's a bunch of different realms that you can explore, and they too have their own things that need to be completed. Whether it's something as simple as finding a chest with a cool item, or completing different puzzles. Like, I haven't even mentioned the puzzle mechanics in the game. I'm someone that loves The Legend of Zelda, so seeing all these puzzles in God of War was very enjoyable. It wasn't just going from one point to another without any real challenge. Most parts in the game, especially if you wanted to get an open chests, there was a puzzle element to most things, which kept things fresh and which kept things innovative. Yes, sometimes it was finding just 3 different things you needed to destroy to open a chest, but it got more intricate than that, especially as you get later on into the game. If you're someone that likes playing a game which throws in a bunch of puzzles, not in a meaningless way, but in a manner which I believe is intriguing and compelling, then I do think that for that reason as well, God of War is the game for you. And then the last thing to mention about God of War, I think, is the sound and the music in the game. This game has wonderful music. You've been hearing some of my favorite tracks in this video as it's been going on, and it's amazing how much emotion that the music in the game can distill from you, especially in key moments. Again, when seeing Kratos and Atreus talk to each other, when you see their relationship build, the mood is very much set by the music in the game. Starting right from the beginning, like straight away in the game when you're cutting down the tree, the music that plays, it really sets a somber tone. It makes it very clear to you that shit, this game is going to have some amazing music, and it stays true to that. Even in combat scenes, like it can get so epic and cinematic, especially through prolonged battles. The music does such an amazing job setting the scene and setting the tone throughout this entire game, both in the combat heavy scenes and also the more somber scenes, and also just in between as well. I think they did a very fantastic job with it. So anyways, Wastelanders, that's all I pretty much have to say about God of War. Again, this wasn't a scripted video. I just wanted to babble on about it. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you've played God of War, I would love to hear your thoughts about the game, and if not, let me know if you have any interest in playing it, especially after watching this video. Again, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe, and until next time, this has been the Lone Vault Wanderer. Please take care of yourself, and would you kindly keep fighting the good fight.